So the other thing that I'm interested in at the minute is habit formation
Mhm.
and creating and maintaining habits. So it's interesting. We talked earlier about the kind of shoulds and things that there's a little bit of a guilty kind of, oh, I should do yoga. I feel like I'm the kind of person who should do yoga. That's the kind of person I would like to imagine myself as, and yet I don't. And
Mm.
I like the idea of, I could just do 5 minutes on one of your videos or one of somebody's videos, and I don't.
Mm.
And there's lots of throughout all of the different people I've been talking to over, 40 odd interviews. Um, Most people have shared things where I think there's some value to this. This is good if it's practiced regularly.
Mm.
How do you make a practice part of your routine if you want to do it?
I think you have to want to. Um, I think that's the crux of it is you have to want to do it. Um, and sometimes you have to realize that you can't do everything. And that actually you have a choice. And if you're choosing to do it, then it's easier to do. Um, but I think sometimes we do feel like we have to do stuff, and then it becomes difficult. And there was it's quite trite, but I think it really works, which is instead of framing it as I have to do this, framing it as I get to do this. So it's like, yeah, which is really trite, but it does work of like, and also it's totally fine if you're not a yoga person, if you're not a, and people have seasons as well. So I think people I know that I have seasons of doing something very regularly, and then something will change in my life and I won't do that for a while, and then I'll come back to it. And I think you can't do everything. And I think that guilt of thinking that you need to do everything kind of overwhelms you. So just pick the ones that you want to do. Because I once wrote down all of the things that I like wanted to do in a day. Of all the things that I was like, oh, I'll get round to that, and I need to do this, I need to do that. And I wrote it all down. And it was like 50 things or something ridiculous where I was like, okay, so I can't do all of this. I just have to pick the ones that are important to me and do them. And for some reason, that makes it easier for me to do stuff because I'm like, oh, I'm choosing to do this.
Yeah. And I think even then, I think that I have a sense quite often of there are things that I want to do,
Mhm.
and yet they've not quite made it into my routine yet. Or it might be because I feel good afterwards.
Mhm.
You like there's certain things like scrolling on your phone, which is easy and you get no reward from it other than the little bits of dopamine as you're clicking on things, and then you feel like crap afterwards. And that same amount of time you could spend doing something like a meditation or some yoga or some tapping or whatever it might be. But it takes that effort to start. And it's like, do you always want to get your mat out? Do you always want to do it?
No,
You get to,
um, no, I don't always want to, but it's become part of it's just like cleaning my teeth. I don't always want to clean my teeth, but I do it. And I think if you have got ADHD, like tendencies, one of the things about ADHD is its transitions are difficult. So I have to attach my habits to something else. So I now shower at the gym. So it's like if I don't go to the gym, like if I want to shower, I have to go to the gym. So now I go to the gym because I have to, because I'm like, well, I may as well, because I need to go and shower there anyway. So I may as well. And I actually have started doing my yoga there. Um, and I feel like accountability, like I have a 7:30 in the morning class that I teach. And there's no way that I would get up at 7:30 to do a class. Um, but because it's live and that I have to get up and do it, and obviously teaching isn't the same as, but if I was getting up to record a class, I wouldn't do it. But just having that like accountability really helps as well of like, okay, I've got to do this. Yeah, that I find that helpful. And also you just get used to not want there's stuff in life that you don't particularly enjoy doing, but you know you'll feel better after. And that's I kind of usually I want to get up and do yoga. Um, but I kind of put it in the same box as hoovering or cleaning my teeth, where it's just something that gets done eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say about linking it with something else. That works for teeth cleaning unless there's a pandemic.
Hmm.
Because I linked my first teeth clean of the day with the last thing to do before you leave the house.
Mm.
So during the first lockdown, I would get to 3 o'clock and go, ugh, because I hadn't left the house. So I'd have to start linking it to something else.
Mhm.
But like my usual routine is, it would be to clean your teeth, put your shoes on. I didn't put my shoes on for, I'd put my shoes on once a week, you know.
But that's why I always like I was reticent to say the cleany teeth thing because I know there's been periods in my time when I actually find cleaning my teeth really hard. Like I'm not, and I have to link it with something else. Um, and I find that there are just periods where you might not do it. Oh, and that's okay. Like that's okay. Like letting yourself have those, like falling off the wagon isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
And not beating yourself up if you do. I always try and frame it as when you remember you haven't done something, like celebrate that you've remembered rather than beat yourself up about the fact that you haven't done it. So, and you don't have to do everything, you don't have to do something every day, um, which is, I think, like I definitely have this thing where if I've done something and I've enjoyed something, I'm like, I'm going to do it every day.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this like my entire personality. Like I've gone to Zumba once. I'm now going to become a Zumba teacher. And actually,
I
like,
got Zumba a lot 3 years ago.
yeah,
It was
that's so weird.
your answer to everything. Just from
That's so weird.
But
Uh,
answer to everything was just don't do yoga, go to Zumba instead.
but yeah, but it's the same. It's the same principle. Like, if you do it once, you kind of think that you have to do it every day, but actually, it's fine to just do something and enjoy it once. That's allowed. You're allowed to do yoga once a year. You're allowed to do yoga like there isn't a I really think that yoga needs to you need to be consistent with yoga, but the consistency isn't the same as frequency. So you don't have to do yoga every day, but if you did yoga every 3 months, like and you did like over time, that would be a lot of yoga because actually the work of yoga, and it's the same with meditation and mindfulness, is it's the fact that this practice stays the same as you move on. So it's like having that stillness. So that part of the beauty of yoga is having that practice that you keep coming back to over time. And so that doesn't like I always think it's better to have a practice that you come back to for years than having a practice where you did it once every day for 6 months and then you never return to it. I think you'll get more. I think people get really bunged up on this idea of doing yoga every day, and you just don't like. Obviously, it's better if you do, but who has the time? Most people don't. I'm a professional yoga teacher, and I do yoga every day, but it's literally my job.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not the same. It's just not the same.
And I think like I will find that there's practices. Um, I'm quite into Paul McKenna things at the minute that a lot of it is about kind of prioritizing and kind
Mm.
of going right. So there's these like trances that he does where he says something in one ear, something else and something in the other ear, and you recite, you count backwards while it's and I always feel good afterwards. It's sometimes it's just like a power nap, but there's the words that are going in are really helpful, they're really motivating, and they're between 20 and 30 minutes. And it's relatively passive. And yet, giving myself the time to do it,
Mm.
I find really difficult. And then I'll get to like so many days have passed and I go, oh, I've not done that in ages. And it's not even a guilt thing. It's almost just like, I've not given that to myself. That's a shame. Like, how do you give yourself those things?
I think it's really hard because I think you have to, the two things need to happen. You have to believe, and like not just like you have to believe that you can feel better, and you need to believe that you're worthy of feeling better. And I think those two things are really hard. Um, they're much harder than it's, I don't think it's a case of everyone always says it's I don't have time, and I really don't think that's the case for most people. I think for most people, you've it comes down to core beliefs about what is possible in life. And sadly, we've all been taught that life's a slog and it's miserable and we're not supposed to enjoy it. Um, and
And
that
you've only got a limited amount of time. You should spend that time doing things that are productive, not things that will make you feel better.
and so it's a really difficult one. Like it sounds really glib when I'm like, you've just got to believe that, but it that's actually a lot of work, like a lot of work to get to the point where you believe that you you deserve to feel good. Um, and it's hard.
Yeah. We were
But
talking before we started today about like funded applications, and I'm thinking, oh, I should be doing a funded application. Like, so doing, should I spend my time doing a Paul McKenna trance thing that is gonna actually be focused on believing in myself, believing in success, and then if I've got time, add in a bit of work on a funding application, or should I slog at the funded application, probably not believing in it and being knackered in the process? I know the answer is the first one.
the to-do list's never getting shorter, ever, 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 ever. Like the to-do list is always, you can always add more to your to-do list. Like I'm always amazed at the things that my brain tells me I should be doing when I sit down to meditate. Like it's like, oh, you need to be ironing. I've never ironed anything in my life.
Oh no,
Why
I'm
am
not, yeah, my brain never tells me that.
why am I suddenly why like the things that are suddenly important, um but your brain doesn't want you to move out of this, like if you're anxious or if you're in the flight or fight state, which I'm sure you already know this, Rachel, but your brain's not going to want to move out of it, because if your brain thinks there's danger, then of course you should stay in that state. So like I know that you're very, very um aware of the flight or fight stuff, but if you lie on the floor, your brain's going to be like, no, but there could be a tiger. Why are you lying on the floor? So your brain's going to try and keep you in that anxious state because your brain wants you to be safe. And I think that's something that we'll have to really recognize when we're wanting to move more to the rest and digest state, is that actually it's probably going to be uncomfortable we until we move, because our brains want us to keep us safe. Um, because if there's a tiger, why are you sitting down to meditate? You need to be hyper vigilant.
Yeah, yeah. How do we get ourselves to that point where we can actually feel safe enough to stop?
I think it's a bit of doing both at once. So like acknowledging that something might not be comfortable, but we still have to do it as much as we can tolerate. and it'll kind of we need to steer the big boat around, and part of steering the big boat is to um do something, because as soon as once it starts steering, it becomes easier to steer, but it's that initial steering that's hard. And so acknowledge then that, oh, it's not comfortable, but I'm gonna have to do it while it's uncomfortable, and get help while that's happening. Like, don't need to do it on your own. Like, have if you've got a friend, like get a friend to do it with you, or speaking to a therapist, or like, have like, you don't have to do it on your own. Because I think everyone seems to think that they have to do everything, like that they're and I think it's from this very individualist society that we live in, that like our mental health is our responsibility. But even just saying to someone like, oh, I'm going to do a meditation, like that creates accountability, and saying, oh, I find it difficult, and having other people, like doing it with people, just makes it 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 makes it feel safer, because we are tribe animals.
Yeah.
So when we're doing things together, then, oh, it's okay, I can relax because they're looking for the tiger. That's all right.
Yeah. I think there's also something in there about believing it's worth doing, like really
Yeah.
believe.
But part of that is believing that it can be better. Because if you don't believe that you can feel better, then you're not going to think it's worth doing, because you're going to think, oh, well, what's the point? I might feel better for 5 minutes, but like, and so you've got to like really, and that's not a thing that you can just like, and part of belief comes from seeing and doing it. So like you kind of, so if you do it before you have the belief, then you kind of get the belief by doing it. It's kind of like a thing that's happening on two tracks.
Yeah. And I think there's something about and maybe this is because I've taught mindfulness for so long, that kind of set, or maybe because I came from a Buddhist background, that there's almost like certain things are more spiritual, certain things are more worthy, that certain things are almost have an ethical, moral element to them, whereas other things can make you feel good and they're not as worthy. So Zumba isn't as good as yoga, I think.
I
But
think that's bullshit.
yeah,
I, yeah, but I
yeah,
can see why it comes. Yeah.
but there's a sense of almost owning whatever your practice is, whatever you choose that practice to be. One of my big things for self-care is, so I have, it's not quite a rule, but an aim is to have more laughter than tears in a
Mm,
and I mean, because I have a toddler who is very willful and cries where she doesn't get her own way. But I really hone in on, yes, the tears are part of it, but I really hone in on celebrating the laughter, creating the laughter, wanting the laughter to be really important. And I then also bring that into my own self-care. So
mm,
one of my favorite things to do for self-care is to sit and watch Taskmaster,
mm,
and to notice and really appreciate when I actually laugh out loud,
mm,
because we don't laugh enough as adults,
mhm.
and to really just catch that. And is that any less worthy or anything than anything else?
No, not at all. Um I think a lot of the I think a lot of the issues we that I personally have, and that I've had to work through, is this letting go of this like made up jury that I have in my head of people like telling us like like I'm always being graded or marked on things, and actually at the end of the day you only have one life and it's yours. And people say, and again, that sounds really glib, but actually it's very the belief or the feeling that you're somehow being judged. And I don't know if it's because I'm was brought up in a Christian country where it's like, God is always watching. I don't know if it's because of Santa. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's like a core belief in our society that we are, there is a good way to spend time and a bad way to spend time, a worthy way of spending time and an unworthy way of spending time. And I think a lot of that pressure that we put on ourselves does add to our anxiety and our feeling of never being enough.
And maybe it's starting from a point of we're enough at whatever we do, we're enough to start with.
Mhm.
You do a lovely practice, which I think that's the other thing. It's just remembering those little practices. I think I almost need like a little load of post-it notes with just little reminders of, oh, I could do that. So you do a lovely practice where it's you breathe in, I come back to this moment, you breathe out, I am enough. And I love that. And that takes what? One breath.
Mhm.
Doesn't need to take a lot of time. I've written on my, so I'm back in therapy at the minute, and it's really helpful. And one of my, I always end it with, what's my homework for this week? And I set myself the homework to be a bit more basic.
Mm.
And I think that's what I mean, to stop kind of breaking myself
Mm.
to do what I should be doing. Because actually, who cares? Do what do what feels good within
Mhm.
within reason. Keep safe, everyone.
But I think it's hard if you're professionally a meditation teacher or professionally a therapist or a yoga teacher or something, because what happens is your self-care becomes wrapped in your professional identity. And because we have all of these stories about work and like work shouldn't be fun and like what's so it becomes, I think everyone who become trains as a some kind of self-care teacher or guide or mentor has this kind of journey of like, well, one now my self-care has become a job. How do I then do it? How do I then have the real self-care? And it's very like I always say to my yoga trainees, my yoga teacher trainees, I always say it's a little bit like marrying your partner in that you have to work. Like it doesn't make the relationship less. Um it makes it more um like defined, but it does change the relationship. And so you're going to have to work to like keep the romance alive with your self-care. So you have to like, I always say, have a little dirty weekend with Pilates. Like go and have a, you might have to just like, you can't just expect yourself to have the same relationship with self-care as you did beforehand, because beforehand it was your escapism, and it's very difficult to turn off that, oh, I could steal that, I could put that, oh, I could do that, oh, we could do a workshop with that, and ooh, it's quite difficult to switch that off. And so I think for someone like you definitely need something. And I think that's why I talk about Zumba all the time, because that's my one where, because I'm never in a Zumba class thinking, oh, I wonder if I should get this teacher to, like it's,
So
I,
different to
it's
your,
just so different, but it's also the same. But I also think you can have that relationship with mindful, because I've definitely come back to having a really um like rich relationship with yoga again, as in a personal capacity, not just in a teaching capacity. But you have to almost like get the power balance back in your brain. It is quite a journey to get there.
and maybe let it unfold in its own time.
Yeah. And just don't feel guilty about it. Like it's nothing's going to make you want to meditate or do yoga less than feeling like it's your job, that you have to. Like, and it's going to make you a good person. Did you go to Catholic school?
No, I did go to a private girls' school where it was highly competitive.
Mm. Mm.
Oh, in terms of like, because I was one of the bad girls at school. for thing. What did we do? Oh, I didn't underline my homework with the right pen. It was that level of what made you a bad.
Mm.
Yeah. There was, yeah, so standards probably didn't help. It's like if you really think that that's something to put me on, I think I was on report because I hadn't underlined a, something in my homework.
Oh, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
You weren't allowed to eat in your school uniform when you walked home from school.
Oh, yeah. So the feeling that someone's always watching you.
There we go.
Mhm.
Mrs. Mills, if you're watching. Any final thoughts?
No, none. No thoughts.
And that's the aim of the game. Thank you very much for joining me once again.
Welcome, lovely, lovely to be here.
Bye.